Good evening. I'm Nisa Petrilli.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Steve Ferguson.
And I'm Anthony Strait, sitting in for Sean Roman.
And this is On the Sports Lines for January 8th, 2015. Happy New Year, everyone. Early January brings our favorite part of the NFL season, playoffs. The divisional round takes place this weekend with doubleheaders on both days. Oh, and there's also this little event to determine college football's national champion. As always, we want to hear from you. So email us at fanspeak@onthesportslines.com. Send your tweets to @onthesportslines and your posts to facebook.com/onthesportslines. We just may read them on the show.
Sean's not here. I'm not doing it.
We will read them.
The NFL's divisional round gets underway with a Saturday doubleheader featuring the New England Patriots hosting the Baltimore Ravens, followed by the Carolina Panthers visiting the defending champion, Seattle Seahawks. Let's start with the Patriots-Ravens. Steve, give me a difference maker from one of the teams other than Tom Brady or Joe Flacco.
Well, I'm going to go with the Ravens, and I'm looking at Halati Noda. He
space
is the best defensive tackle in the league. And I think if they put a lot of pressure on Tom Brady, and I'm talking about he and Terrell Suggs, if they get to him and at least put pressure on him and sack him, I think that will definitely get Brady off his rhythm, and that could really have an effect on the game.
Yeah, and the guy's a huge run stuffer up the
He
gut
certainly
for them.
is.
You can't run up the middle against
No,
him.
not at all.
Well, since you're focusing on the front end of the defense, I want to focus on the back end, and that is the Ravens' pass rush secondary. Look at the players they have lost this season to injuries. Jimmy Smith, Danny Gore, Asa Jackson, Tremaine Jacobs, all the season ending injuries. That drops a really good defense that could play the pass to number 24th in the league and giving up 249 points yards a game. Ooh. That's a big drop off. At one point, they were 31st as late as week 10.
Really? Wow.
Now, the pass rush secondary, they've been anchored by Darius Webb and Rashawn Melvin. It's been kind of like a game of musical chairs at corner.
Yeah.
But now you got Jeremy Miles playing in, Will Hill, who's finally actually
He's
on the
playing
field
well.
and not suspended.
Yeah, he's playing well.
You know, they kind of showed up that the safety position. Last week against the Steelers, they actually limited the big plays that the Steelers was getting. And that's a big part of their stable in offense.
Yep.
November 2nd, remember, Roethlisberger lit them up for six touchdowns. Six touchdowns. And they limited the big plays. Darian Stewart made two very, very key plays. Yeah. One was the interception to kill the Valley. The second one, remember, he forced Antonio Brown out of bounds.
Right.
Yes.
On what would have been a touchdown if he then got both feet in the end zone. Remember, there's no force out anymore.
That's right.
Now, here's the thing. They did give up 334 yards passing and a touchdown, but Roethlisberger's QB rating was 79.3. 57 points less than the 136 QB rating he racked up on November 2nd.
Wow.
Now, they have the Patriots on Saturday, ranked number 9th in passing, and they have they have a tight end on that side that they have to get 10 winners.
Yeah, they do. Man, look at him with the softball setup for me. Okay,
good.
now granted, this may be a Captain Obvious pick here. But, there's a reason why they say your best players have to bring your best effort in the biggest games. And Gronkowski is going to have to do that. Now, the Patriots have struggled, especially in the playoffs, and especially Tom Brady, against the Ravens since 2009. They're 1-2. Brady's numbers are not good at all in comparison to whoever else he's played in the playoffs. So Gronkowski is New England's #1 big play weapon. 82 receptions on 131 targets, 1,124 yards, 12 touchdowns. This is a guy who makes huge plays. He needs to come up big. Now, granted, you got Julian Edelman, led the team in targets and receptions. Brandon LaFell had a breakthrough season. Yeah. The Ravens will have to count for them, but Gronkowski is the big play target for the Patriots. He's a matchup nightmare for defenses. New England is 9-1 this season when he gets 50 yards receiving or more. Wow. Now, in the past, the Ravens have tried to chip Gronkowski at the line. specifically with Terrell Suggs. Gronkowski is just as physical, so he's been able to circumvent that strategy. C.J. Mosley has been a really good cover linebacker for the Ravens this year. He doesn't have the size, though, to match up with Gronkowski. Gronkowski can just box him out. Now, they may bring Matt Elam down from the strong safety spot to work in some double/combo coverages on Gronkowski, but the best way, and as you put it, Steven, this is the best way to keep Gronkowski from having a big game is get to Tom Brady. Because if they don't, Gronkowski's going to do some dancing in the end zone.
That's the key to anyone who ever plays the Patriots is get to Tom Brady because he's a different quarterback under pressure.
Yes, he
really is.
Well, moving over to Seahawks Panthers. Anthony, give me a difference maker on one of the teams other than Russell Wilson or Cam Newton.
Well, I want to say this really slow because he needs to be a household name. Luke Kuechly, the stud linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. He is third year in the league. Second season, he's been named to the All-Pro team. Also, look at his season stats. 153 tackles, 3 sacks, 11 passes defended, recorded at least 150 tackles each of his first 3 seasons. Now, let's get back to last Saturday. He spearheaded that defense against Arizona. Record low, 78 yards of total offense, and he lost 20 yards in that last play. So it would have been a lot less than that. His final wild card stats: 10 tackles, 6 solo, 1 interception, and a tip pass. But his skill set reminds me so much of Brian Urlacher. His range, his athleticism, getting from one end to the other. And when he drops back into the cover 2, it feels more like a cover 3 because he has that speed to keep up with any slot receiver or tight end. And he's also a very good run stopper filling the gap, which is very key against Seattle, who loves to run that read option offense, and he loves to throw a lot of seam routes over the middle. So Luke Kuechly, very key component in that Carolina Panthers defense.
Yeah, he's going to have to be a difference maker. I'm looking at the Panthers as well, but I'm looking on the offensive side of the ball. Now, as we all know, Cam Newton may be the straw that stirs the drink for the Panthers offense, but without Jonathan Stewart providing a legitimate ground game, that offense is less dynamic and lacking in dimension. There's the thing. Stewart only played 13 games, only started 8, still managed to rack up a team-leading 809 yards on 4.6 yards a carry. In his last 4 games, all Carolina wins coming down the stretch. He rushed for 401 yards and 5.1 yards a carry. The only running back who had more yards in the last 4 games of this season, DeMarco Murray, 418. Now, here's the thing. In a wild card win over Arizona, he kept that going, 123 yards, 24 carries. That's 5.1 yards per carry. So he's picking up yards in chunks. Now, here's the thing. Those last 4 games against run defenses ranked 19th, 21st, 29th, and 32nd. But, the Panthers did not average almost 200 yards per game on the ground in December by luck, largely behind Stewart. Now, here's the thing. Can he do it against the NFL's number 3 run defense? Bobby Wagner and Cam Chancellor were both banged up or out when these teams played in week 8, and he had 16 carries for 79 yards, which is almost 5 yards a pop. Now, those guys are back. The question is, can he be a difference maker with those guys healthy going against a much improved Seattle run defense? He's going to have to be if Carolina wants to have a shot.
That's a great question. Well, for me, I'm looking at Doug Baldwin.
Yeah.
And he is probably
Seahawks wide receiver.
Yeah, he's a Seattle Seahawks best wide receiver. He's very underrated because nobody really talks about how effective this guy is.
No.
He's strong, he's fast, he's reliable, he's efficient, he makes all the plays for them, and he's definitely their best deep threat. And so they really have to be careful in terms of guarding him because if they allow him to get open, he will definitely burn Carolina.
That's true. Well, guys, the NFL Divisional Round Sunday doubleheader has the Dallas Cowboys visiting the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers, followed by the Denver Broncos hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Let's start with Packers-Cowboys. Jay, give me a difference maker from one of the teams other than Aaron Rodgers or Tony Romo.
Well, I'm going with Jason Witten, Cowboys tight end. Now, Witten this year, only 90 targets, only 64 catches, only 703 yards, only 5 TDs. But when Tony Romo needs a first down to keep a drive going, Witten is his safety blanket, his go-to guy. Now, this was never more evident in the game-defining fourth-quarter drive against the Lions last week in the wild card round. 4th and 6. 4th in the game, basically. At the Lions 42, game is on the line. Everybody in the stadium, on the sidelines, us watching at home, all knew the ball is going to Witten. But you know what? He still made the play. 21-yard gain, first down, drive stays alive, ends up in a touchdown. That is what 12 years of pitching and catching between quarterback and tight end gets you. Witten had 5 catches for 63 yards in that game, most of it in the middle of the field where he makes his living these days, including that crucial 21-yarder. Now, granted, he's no longer the vertical threat he used to be, because as we all remember back in the day, he was Jimmy Graham before Jimmy Graham was Jimmy Graham.
He was.
Okay, this is the first time since his rookie year he's averaged less than 10 yards a catch. But he has sharpened his ability to just simply get open no matter what coverage the defense employs, mostly because his route is an option route every time. He reads the defense, reacts to the coverage, alters his route accordingly. He has enough of a mindset hookup with Romo that they can play off that. And that's what makes him a chain-moving machine, and that could be the difference between the Cowboys going on to the title game or going back to Dallas.
Well, I'm also going to look at wide receivers, but I'm looking at Dallas's other great wide receiver, and that's Dez Bryant. This guy is probably the most scintillating wide receiver that Dallas has. He is extremely fast. He makes all the plays, the great leaping catches in the end zone. You can double him. He'll still make plays for you. Yeah, he's a little bit crazy at times.
Mercurial is the word.
Mercurial. Reminds you a little bit of Keyshawn Johnson.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. But he is a terrific player, and I think if they're not careful and they don't cover him well, he'll be the one who'll burn them in the game.
I'll tell you what, it will not surprise me if the Packers, who do not have the best pass defense in the NFL, they may shift some coverages, play a little more, zone, cover 2, cover 3, and slide the safety over the top on Bryant. I'll tell you what, though, Bryant can beat those if needs be.
Yeah, he's fast
but
enough to do it.
If I'm the Cowboys, and I'm Tony Romo and Jason Witten, I'm saying, yeah, you go ahead.
Yep.
You go ahead. We'll let Witten work all day underneath.
He'll work underneath all day.
Speaking of working on secondaries, Green Bay has a receiver of their own. His name is Jordy Nelson.
Oh, yeah.
And he has lived up to that 4-year contract
He
he signed at the beginning of the season. He set the record for 1,519 yards receiving, over 15 yards a catch.
Wow.
Number 4 in targets. He gets 151 times he's been thrown to. Then you look at how he stepped up with all the veterans that left. Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, James Jones, Jermichael Finley, staples in the Green Bay Packers offense for so many years gone. Here comes Jordy Nelson. He steps in, he stepped up, and he has that big play capability as well as being a third down receiver. He's a dual threat. And also, he's ranked in the top 5 of receptions of 40 or more yards. And the chemistry, you talk about that kind of
connection, that almost
telepathy. Yeah, he's got that with Aaron Rodgers.
Him and Aaron Rodgers are very good at being able to improvise at the line of scrimmage, depending on the coverage. Look for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers and that offense to move him around in the slot against that very suspect Cowboys secondary.
Put him in motion.
Put him in motion. Well, Orlando Scandrick is good, but he's not great.
No.
So I like Jordy Nelson against that Cowboys secondary and their inability to stop the big play 9 out of 10 times all day.
And especially at Lambeau Field.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Any opportunity to say the words frozen tundra.
Got to get it in.
And we'll be frozen too, by the way.
Well, moving over to Broncos Colts. Anthony, give me a difference maker from one of the teams other than Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck.
You know what? I'm going to go with Wes Welker. Remember him?
Oh, yes.
He's kind of the forgotten man in that offense.
In that offense, yes, with the emergence of Thomas and Thomas.
He did not play in the first game between these two teams. Remember, he was suspended the first 4 games.
That's right.
And he's had an injury-riddled season. He's had he's been ailing right ankle.
He has not been Wes Welker.
No, he hasn't quite been that.
When you have 3 concussions in 10 months, that would take away some of your effectiveness.
Yeah.
49 catches, 464 yards, second lowest total in his career. Y'all go back to his rookie season in 2005 with the Dolphins.
That's right.
To see worse. And then you see Julius Thomas, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, the Broncos using more of the running game. He's kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Has Sanders been great for them?
Oh, absolutely. He's been amazing. But in recent weeks, both of the Thomases have been kind of slow by injury. So Welker's kind of been featured a little more. 6 catches, 86 yards, season high in the Week 14 game against Buffalo. I can see Peyton Manning looking to him early on a short intermediate routes, especially if the Colts play the box and play 7-8 man, in the box to stop the run. You look for Walker to kind of get into a rhythm, get him in sync, get him involved in the game. And what that does is that's going to open up a lot of big play possibilities down the field with these other receivers. So look for Denver to really look for Walker early and often the first 15 to 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, if he's his usual self, he takes up the short middle. You got to focus on him. That opens up the deep middle between the linebackers and the safety for a guy like Julius Thomas. And so he'll have less pressure on him. That allows the other two wide receivers, Sanders and Thomas, to make big plays. The dimension that he adds to that offense cannot be understated.
Yep. And speaking of Julius Thomas, what he can do deep for Denver is amazing. He is fast, strong, reliable, very difficult.
Prototypical tight end of this generation.
Absolutely. And so if the Colts really don't cover him very well, they're going to have a long day.
He's a matchup
He
nightmare.
is a nightmare to cover.
Linebackers are too slow for him. Safeties are not big enough.
Exactly.
They line him up out wide. They move him around
Yep,
as
they
well.
move him
That's
all
the
around.
thing. They move all of these guys around to put him in the best matchup situations. And every single one of those four guys, Demaryius Thomas, Sanders, Welker, Julius Thomas, they're all matchup
Yeah, they're all
nightmares. And if
matchup
they're all
nightmares.
working in sync, Peyton Manning has a field day.
That's right.
And who's yours?
Oh, who's mine? I should throw my 2 cents in here. I'm
Why
going to
not,
look on the
Jay?
flip side. These guys took care of the Broncos. I'll talk about the Colts. And I'm going to look at their big play guy, which is T.Y. Hilton. And this season, he has come into his own as a top-flight NFL wide receiver. He replaced Reggie Wayne as Andrew Luck's #1 target. 131 targets, 82 catches, 1,345 yards, 7 touchdowns. Made the Pro Bowl for the first time. He will be expected to bring his A game on the biggest stage he has been on in a while. Here's the potential fly in the ointment for Hilton, and this could seriously negatively impact his ability to be a difference maker. And it's his penchant for dropping passes in the postseason.
Yes,
he is the third most targeted wide receiver in the postseason since he started 3 years ago. But he also leads the NFL in drops in the postseason.
Wow.
6 catches for 103 yards in the win over the Bengals. He also had 3 drops. Now, Aqib Talib is probably going to be the primary defender assigned to him. Though the Broncos, I can see them sliding coverage, a little safety help, whether it's in zone or in man, in an attempt to limit his availability to Luck. So if that's going to put his targets at a premium, then both his catches and his drops will become even more magnified. If he's going to be a difference maker, and the Colts need him to be one,
they do.
He cannot afford to drop. So that's something to keep an eye on. Will he drop or will he not?
So I'm basically saying, since all that, we're picking the Broncos, aren't we? We're kind of universally agreeing on this one.
Yeah, you kind of
With
have
that
to.
said,
I'll make it a consensus. I'm taking the Broncos
Kind of
too.
have to.
Well, college football's national championship gets decided on Monday, January 12th, as the #2 seed Oregon Ducks take on the #4 seed Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to look at X factors for each team, plus a key for each quarterback, and we're going to do it lightning round style. 1 analyst, 1 question, 1 answer. Steve, you're up first. Who's the X factor for Ohio State?
I'm going with Ezekiel Elliott. What a game this guy had. I mean, he was phenomenal in his last game. Speed, quickness, and burst. I mean, this guy took off and ran down the field. And I've never seen any running back run on Alabama. Happy to see it happen, as well as this guy did. And if he runs like that against Oregon, that could be very interesting.
Anthony, your turn. Who's the X factor for Oregon?
I'm going with Jake Fisher, the senior left tackle for Oregon. And remember, he's moved from right to left after Tyler Johnstone suffered that season an injury. He missed 2 games, too. He suffered some injury to his knee ligaments. And in those 2 games, Marcus Mariota sacked 12 times in 2 games. Since he's come back, he showed up that offensive line, 14 sacks over 8 games. None in the Rose Bowl victory over Florida State. So in that fast-paced offense, Mariota getting enough time, that's going to be my X factor right there.
Jay, what will be the keys for each quarterback in this game?
Well, I'm going to stay on the Oregon track first. Marcus Mariota is, in my estimation, he's very Ben Roethlisberger-like in terms of extending plays by moving around inside the pocket without losing sight of his reads. Oregon does a really good job of moving him outside the pocket to allow him to throw on the run, which he excels at in this system. The key for Mariota is going to be making plays with his legs, whether on design quarterback runs out of the spread or pulling the ball down and running when the pocket collapses or none of his receivers are open. He needs to show little bit of dual threatness to keep the Ohio State defense, especially their front four, off balance as to whether or not they should blitz an extra defender or load the box, which will limit their ability to show Mariota different looks. If you can't be a creative defense against Mariota, he's going to chew you up. If he is able to do this, and his 731 rushing yards indicate that he can be a dual threat in this game, he could become the 10th Heisman Trophy winner to claim a national championship in the same season. For Ohio State, you've got Cardell Jones, who was the previous third-string quarterback, now making only his third start of the season for the Buckeyes. Now, while there's no doubt he has plenty of potential and has shown plenty of athletic ability, the key for him is going to be to exhibit patience in the pocket, go through his reads progressions, and not automatically take off if his primary option is covered. In other words, if Devin Smith is covered, don't automatically take off. Okay? Now, granted, Jones shows that he can be a threat with his legs, converted a pair of third downs in crucial situations against Alabama, but it's going to be his patience and his decision-making in the pocket, not giving up on plays and taking off early, not taking bad sacks, not forcing balls into tight coverage. That will be the key to the Buckeyes taking home the national championship. We'll see which quarterback is able to execute better. I think will make the difference.
You making a bold prediction?
What bold prediction? I've been talking Mariota up for 3 years on this show. Going with Oregon. Come on.
Go Ducks.
It's like a David versus Goliath in the quarterback position. You got a third string and the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. That's like, if that's not a big orange, apple and orange comparison, I don't know what is.
Who you like?
Ooh, you know what? I'm going with Oregon in a blowout.
Steve?
I'm going with Oregon, but I think it's going to be a little closer than we think.
I agree with Steve. Oregon, but very close.
You know what? It's going to be a very interesting game because you've got two different styles of offense. Both of them like to play with pace. If you look at, what gets lost is everybody talks about the speed in which Oregon runs its offense.
Yeah.
Mark Helfrich's, their head coach, has actually on occasion changed up and slowed down a little bit and run some huddle just to throw defenses off. But people don't talk about it. And you remember this when he was coaching Florida. Urban Meyer likes to play at a fast pace.
Very quick.
Ohio State's not going to be any slouch on defense. It's going to be interesting to see on offense. It's going to be interesting to see which defense is actually able to not necessarily shut down, but get critical stops in the fourth quarter so that they can get that offense off the field and give their own offense a chance to make some noise.
You have it right.
Yeah. Well, that music means it's time for the 3-minute warning. Anthony, lead off.
When Phil Jackson was brought in as a savior last March, Knicks fans should have realized that rebuilding the Knicks would not happen overnight. While there was no excuse for the Knicks having the NBA's worst record, there were no signs that indicated that this was no more than a throwaway season. Various injuries, lack of chemistry, and a rookie head coach had this ship ready to sink from the start. Now that the Knicks are at rock bottom, the Zen Master can finally rebuild the once-storied franchise piece by piece. The trade of J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert not only opens up more cap space for the offseason, but it signals the change in culture that Jackson began last summer. Knicks fans are impatient because it's been 42 years since the last championship. But what's one more, right? If Phil Jackson is actually going to be a savior, he would need more than a mere 10 months on the job to make things right. 11 rings and one of the sharpest basketball minds around is more than enough to earn the benefit of the doubt. Jackson may have been a part of those Knicks teams that made the Garden Eden, but he's been around enough to know that good things always come to those who wait.
Mike Piazza, no Hall of Fame, a colossal shame. Let's see, 427 home runs, 1,335 RBIs, 308 batting average in 16 seasons, 1993 Rookie of the Year as a Dodger, Mets' most dangerous home run hitter in the late 90s and early 2000s, 62nd round pick in the draft only because his father knew Tommy Lasorda. All this and the best hitting catcher ever? What? He's still not a Hall of Famer with these credentials? The baseball writers of America practically disown those who take steroids. But what are they smoking, snorting, or freebasing? How is Mike Piazza not a Hall of Famer 2 straight years? Let's hope in 2016, after the haze dissipates, he'll finally make it to the Hall.
I woke last Sunday morning to a text from our buddy James Ferguson telling me that Stuart Scott, my favorite ESPN anchor, had passed away overnight. I was stunned. I knew he'd been battling cancer for a long time, but I was stunned nonetheless. Whenever Stu was anchoring SportsCenter, it was must-see TV. I want to know what play would get his first booyah of the night, which player turned in a performance befitting a cool as the other side of the pillow mention, and which one merited a you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the heck up out of here. If the measure of a life is how it impacts others, then Stuart Scott truly lived. From the outpouring of admiration, respect, and love across social media, yours truly included, to the moment of silence at the Knicks-Bucks game that Sunday night, from the tribute by the University of North Carolina prior to their Monday night game against Notre Dame, to fellow ESPN anchor Hannah Storm fighting back tears as she broke the news on SportsCenter. And finally, to his old ESPN buddy Rich Eisen doing the highlights of the Colts-Bengals playoff game on the NFL Network using nothing but Scott's catchphrases. The impact his life had on others was made as apparent as a Midtown billboard. Stu never let his fight with cancer get in the way of him living his life. He said best at the ESPYs, "You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live." Words that should serve as inspiration to us all.
Anyone who knows me is well aware of my hatred of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Really?
They robbed my Miami Hurricanes of the national championship in the 2002 season on a bogus pass interference call. And for that, I will never forgive them. But that being said, I'm actually glad they're in the national championship game instead of Alabama, for the sole fact that they are the number 4 seed. If we would have ended up with an Alabama-Oregon championship game, then it would have been 1 versus 2. And believe me, there would have been plenty of naysayers out there questioning why we even needed a playoff in the first place if it simply gave us the same results as the BCS. To me, this 2 versus 4 matchup validates the new system. It makes it more interesting and proves the NCAA did the right thing by finally implementing a college football playoff. But of course, I'll be rooting for Oregon to win it all. Go Ducks!
Go Ducks.
All of us at On the Sports Lines were saddened by the passing of ESPN's Stuart Scott. He was a trailblazer in the field of sports broadcasting, and his unique style made millions of viewers laugh.
Amen.
We send our deepest condolences to his family and loved ones. For Jay Kaplan, Steve Ferguson, and Anthony Strait, I'm Nisa Petrilli. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us. We'll see you on January 22nd for another edition of On the Sports Lines. Remember, if you want to see this show again or catch up on any of the ones you might have missed, check us out at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And check out James Ferguson's blog piece on the passing of Stuart Scott at onthesportslines.blogspot.com. Good night, everyone.
Night,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.